Superman is soaring back into cinemas this July, and I'm celebrating with a whole slew of Superman videos. Today I'm taking a look at the collector edition Christopher Reeve and trying out a super selection of head swaps. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Starting with the packaging, and it only makes sense that a prestige figure like this would come in a prestigious collector edition box. This is the 25th figure in the line, and comes from 1978's Superman the movie. If there was any doubt, we have a wonderful publicity still of Superman on the back, truly epitomizing the character come to life. For those searching in-store, here's the UPC, and between the zhuzhing up of the box with silver accents, and making it very clear which Superman we're getting. For packaging, Superman the movie gets 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and Superman stands at a statuesque 7.5 inches, or just a little over 18.5 centimeters. Addressing the elephant in the room, I'm sure a lot of you were hoping this would be a Versus with the NECA version. Unfortunately, mine has broken. So until I can spin the world backwards to fix it or find another solution, that's just not going to be on the table. I will say that all these years later, I'm still very impressed with this likeness, and I do think it's slightly stronger than McFarlane's. Not that this is a bad figure, mind you. Overall, I'm very impressed. I had originally wondered if he was going to share parts with Adam West or the Riddler, but that's not the case. Near as I can tell, this is a 100% new sculpt, and they have done a pretty good job. I do wish that his muscles were a bit more defined. Referring back to the box, and Christopher Reeve really did build himself up for the role. I have seen criticism online that his arms or especially legs should be bulkier, but I think he cuts a pretty good silhouette. I'm especially pleased with the colors and accuracy of the logo. The logo's been sculpted away from the body, which is cool, but in certain angles kind of looks like it's pulling away from the body like a sticker. I'm also very happy to see the logo on the cape. That cape is both soft goods and wired, and we all know how much I love that. It's hard to tell on camera because of how subtle it is, but McFarlane also added the seams and wrinkles for his boots. Unfortunately, the red on the ankle ball doesn't match. One of my only real criticisms are the wrists, mainly that they aren't flesh tone, but also that they added this double banded cuff, similar to what we see on more modern Superman designs. Referring back to NECA, and I think it's because he did have some wrinkles at the cuff, and McFarlane just kind of went overboard. It's not enough to ruin the figure or anything like that, but it does distract a little bit. Luckily, pulling focus from that is this really good head sculpt. Switching back over to the box, we can see this is one of McFarlane's strongest likenesses. I also think it does look better at certain angles than others. Sideways, for example, and you can really see it. That said, it seems like the right eye on mine might be just a little bit off. Cocking him ever so slightly, and for presentation, I'm giving Superman 4 points. Moving on to Poseability, and while the articulation scheme is pretty standard, it's the range that we need to talk about. Working our way top down, and Christopher can only look up this high. For some perspective, here's looking straight, and then he can look this far down. Not bad, but I do wish he could look a little higher. The tilt's really good though, and of course all the way around. Moving on down, Reeve can raise his arm just a hair under 90 degrees, but does have complete rotation. Very impressive amount of forward and back thanks to the rotator cuff, along with bicep swivel, double jointed elbows with that perfect DC Multiverse bend, and wrist balls that can swivel and hinge either up and down or side to side. Moving to the middle, and this Superman has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist. He can only arch back this far, and I have to admit, for a flying character, I'd like to see just a bit more than that. In combination with his neck articulation, here's what flying looks like, and while it's okay, we don't really get that soaring into the camera look that I was hoping for. Also, and not surprisingly, we don't get much in the way of hunching forward. The tilt is good, however, as is the twist. Below the bright yellow belt, and Superman has the standard McFarlane hips. He can kick just over 90 degrees, which is really impressive, and bend back this far. He's also got a super split. Not a whole lot of twist in the hip, but it's there. Really impressive bend though on that double jointed knee. And then moving all the way down, we've got toe articulation and McFarlane style ankle balls that can swivel, hinge, and like 1978 movie audiences, going from not believing a man could fly to believing a man could fly. Pivot. For Poseability, I'm giving Christopher Reeve Superman 4 points. Moving on to Playability, and in terms of accessories, I do feel a little bit conflicted. First and foremost, and of course we've got the trading card. Also, instead of a regular figure stand, they gave him a flight stand. And that's one thing that McFarlane does that really sets them apart from most other domestic toy makers. He's also got 8 alternate hands. So in addition to those super sluggers we've been looking at, he's also got grabbing hands for holding on to the legs of a helicopter, a pair of flat palm flying hands, a couple of more relaxed gestury hands. He's also got a pointer for reprimanding Lex Luthor or picking his nose. But coolest of all, this one holding the crystal from his ship. Little wonky on the side, but still a very cool addition. So then, between a flight stand, a wired cape, and 10 interchangeable hands, what could I possibly be on the fence about? This alternate head. I'm not saying it isn't well done or that I don't appreciate it, but this head was only included to accommodate the Platinum edition of the corrupted Superman from Superman 3. They even have the slightly grayed temples for it. The issue is that that head is useless to this version of Superman, just as the nice normal version is useless for the corrupted version. The only reason is to make us buy multiples hoping to get it, which is silly because there's no world where this wasn't going to sell like gangbusters, and buying multiples just means it's harder for other collectors to get a hold of him, and that just makes everybody angry. Ideally, corrupted Superman would have been its own separate release, with this head unique to that version, and then regular Superman could have come with an extra head more appropriate to this version. Personally, I would have loved a full-on smile, or if you really wanted to do double duty, have the screaming head from when Lois Lane died, because corrupted Superman could have totally had that one too. And if they'd made corrupted Superman a 2-pack, it would have been a great way of giving us Clark Kent as well. But playability is more than accessories or grousing about what could have been. It's also about how well your figure plays with others. Starting with the comparison I think a lot of us were the most excited for, and here's Superman with Michael Keaton Batman. Oh, how many of us wished we could have seen these two share the screen. That said, both Val Kilmer and George Clooney reference Metropolis and Superman, so it only makes sense to bring them out too. But for the other obvious Cape Crusader crossover, and here's Christopher Reeve and Adam West. This one has the cape swapped out with Hugo Strange. For those interested in how this Superman might work on their comic shelf, and here's Year 2 and Nightfall versions of Batman. While I'm here though, our friend Adrian asked to see this Superman with Detective Comics 27 and Hush versions of Batman, as well as Page Punchers, but long as I'm here, might as well bring out Noel too. As for the rest of the Justice League, and here's Wonder Woman. Word has it that McFarlane's working on the rights to do Linda Carter. Next up is The Flash, hoping we get John Wesley Shipp at some point. For Green Lantern, and here's Silver Age Hal Jordan, and Endless Winter Aquaman with an alternate Barry Allen head. For one I'm sure a lot of you would like to see, and here's Supergirl. Would love to see a Helen Slater figure. And then for just a couple of Superman villains, and here's Lex Luthor in his battlesuit, as well as Injustice 2 and Page Puncher's versions of Brainiac. For a relative scale comparison, here's Superman with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. And as always, here he is with... gosh, I don't know who this is. Alright, Iron Man, you've made your point. What? How did you know it was me? Must be the X-ray vision, right? I knew I should have gotten lead frames. And now it's time for the main event, head swaps. First up is Action Comics 1000. The Walmart version is more readily available and has a cloth goods wired cape, but the neck sits a bit low. It's a bit longer on the original edition. As such, this balances out a bit better. Other way around, and this one sits a bit high. The skin tones are also slightly different, but with a little work, if you wanted to use this as a comic style Superman, you absolutely could. For a brighter color scheme, and here's my kit bash combining the Atomic Skull version of Action Comics 1000 with Hush. For those wishing the new figure was a bit bulkier, this is a pretty decent compromise. Again though, you'd probably need to repaint that neck. Swapping the trunks, then this is a pretty nice upgrade. Not that different, but still more classic. Next up, and here's the rest of Hush. Admittedly, the realistic head clashes with the more stylized body, but if you feel inspired, I'm happy to help. On the flip side, if you wanted to use this for a comic style soups, it doesn't look bad. The neck's a bit thin in proportion to the head, and of course you'd have to do some painting, but there could be something there. For one that I've been curious about, and here's DC Classic, I was mainly curious because this is the body most people use for Christopher Reeve and Brandon Routh customs. I also decided to swap the hands and trunks and have pretty good news. The colors are off, but the hands do fit, so we finally have an alternative to those boxing mitts that Page Punchers comes with. Other way around, and this might just be my favorite so far. As usual, it sits a bit high and needs to be repainted, but this smile is exactly the kind of head that I really wish Christopher Reeve came with. For the one that I'm the most excited for though, and here's Crisis on Infinite Earths, whose head I recently swapped out with Action Comics #1. Think of it as two birds, one stone. A lot of collectors, myself included, half expected McFarlane to use use this body for Christopher Reeve, and while I do think it looks good, it is a bit bulky for him. It does have that larger-than-life quality I imagine when I think of Christopher Reeve's Superman, and if you wanted to make the switch, you just have to break out the paints. Other way around, I'm not quite sure this head works as well here. It does have a kinda sorta Silver Age vibe, but it might just be a bit too big for this body. For a villainous option, in here Cyborg Superman. Just on its own, the head swap is a fun combination, but borrowing a couple of parts from Cyborg shows us the full potential. If any of you want to imagine what a live-action Cyborg Superman could be, this is a great start. For one more villain, and here we have Bizarro. This is one I think would probably look better on the Platinum Edition, but in case I can never find it, I didn't want to miss the chance to try it out. While the live-action Superboy got a Bizarro, Christopher Reeve never did, so if you want to give him one, this is a pretty decent combo. Lastly, in here we have the Question. Why the Question? Why, for Clark Kent, of course. These are some third-party glasses I got off of eBay, and overall this is very encouraging. If you were to paint the suit gray and the coat tan, I think it would be a perfect Christopher Reeve Clark. Maybe do some cutting and swapping to give him the hat. I haven't heard any rumors of McFarlane giving us one, so this might be your best bet. On the subject of betting, I'd be willing to bet you'd like to see some other Superman heads. Action Comics 1000 looks particularly good, and if you want to go for some superpowers vibes, you could even keep the suit blue. The DC Classic head looks great. This one gives me a real George Reeves vibe. With a little bit of paint, Hush is a pretty good option. The lack of a well-defined super curl really helps. As for Action Comics #1, that has a real Max Fleischer vibe, and of course we also have that figure to look forward to. Lastly, and I did get a request to try swapping out Ultraman 2-pack hands on the Task Force Superman. Sadly though, the pegs are not compatible, so the hands are not swappable. Sorry about that. Even if I am a bit disappointed that the Corrupted Superman is a Platinum Edition, or that this head came with this version of the character, in no way does that take away from all the other great accessories and wired cape. For playability, I'm still giving this Superman 5 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. Between the new sculpting, wired cape, and all the accessories, at $30, this is one collector edition that does feel worth it. He's still shipping, so don't go running to the aftermarket just yet, but if you see him, get him. I have no doubt that this figure's gonna fly off the shelves faster than a speeding bullet. For price, I'm giving Christopher Reeve's Superman 5 points, averaging out to a very good total of 4.6 out of 5. The next Superman video I'll be tackling is the Henry Cavill Doomsday 2-pack, and to mark the occasion I picked up a little something extra that you're not gonna want to miss. For more Superman videos right now, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice and have fun.